Hello and welcome to the Knowledge and Resolution Hub. This morning we're in Ontario, Canada. I'm John Dowse, and today I have as my guest Gary Williams, President of IEDG, and we're here to talk about an article which Gary wrote recently in the CIQS Construction Economist titled, "Are We Ready for the Construction Tsunami?" A very entertaining article. I'm sure it could have been a lot longer than the publishers allowed for the script. Yeah. Gary, would you like to say hello, introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll talk more about the article?
Absolutely. No, I'm Gary Williams. I'm the president of IEDG. We worked for Bechtel for almost 30 years, started off building nuclear power plants, building oil refineries, chemical plants, put in fiber optic networks around the San Francisco Bay Area. And, my background has been building large projects and mines. Also worked on mines in Liberia and in northern Ontario. And so I've got a very diverse background. Some might say I can't hold down a job. I moved jobs every year and a half, staying with Bechtel most of that time. But it also gave me a broad perspective of how these projects come together.
Yeah, I like to view it that we're not changing jobs; we're just looking for the next challenge.
Oh, there you go.
The construction industry is challenging at times. I have a similar background, just over 40 years in construction now. Started with a civil engineering degree, went into the commercial side because I didn't like getting cold, being stood out on the sites all day, and then onto the legal side. So I've dealt a lot with problem projects in my career. A number of different countries, from Australia in the south through to Canada in the north.
Well, that's what happens when you're good too, John. They say, "Oh, we need to get John over here on this job. It's kind of a problem." That's what's happened to me too. So
it's encouraging to know, and I'll let my clients know that
there
the
you
next
go.
time they question an invoice. So, Gary, this article, interesting title. Are we ready for the construction tsunami? Tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Well, every time I look around, somebody else is announcing some new 10, 20, $50 billion project. Just last week, we heard about a brand new nuclear power plant east of Darlington that the OPG is planning on building, which I don't know what the ultimate price will be, but it'll be well north of $10 billion, and we've got subway systems, and we've got hospitals and infrastructure, and we've got battery plants and all kinds of different projects that people are building all over North America, frankly, but particularly here in Ontario, and I don't know that we have all the people and all the resources and all the practices in place that we frankly need to have to be able to do all this work. And this work is important, John. These are all jobs we really need to have done. At least, maybe we don't need 100% of them, but certainly we need most of them. There's some good reasons to be rebuilding many of these facilities and building new facilities. So, yeah.
Yeah. I've only been in Canada for 5 years and have had the privilege of working on a couple of the local rail transport systems. I won't name them for keep some anonymity, but undoubtedly here in Ontario they are known for not performing well, running over budget, going on exceptionally long. Is that your experience more generally in Canada as well?
Well, just look at in the last 20 years, there's the Muskrat Falls project in Labrador that has just, been kind of an abomination, frankly. And there's the pipeline over the Rockies that the that the feds bought and tried to finish, well, did finish, but to the tune of $30 billion after initially thinking it was, half of that or a third of that or even less. And there's the Site C project in BC, and there's the LRT up in Ottawa, and there's the LRT in Calgary and Edmonton. All of these projects have been fraught with issues. And there's really no reason for that, John. Those of us that have been on projects before, the projects are never easy, but they don't all have to fail.
Yeah.
I mean, we know how to build these things. We should be consulting the people that know how to build them and work through it. And honestly, the biggest issue I have, John, is the fact that for some reason there's a sense that this is easy. Anybody can do this. Oh, we'll just hire the lowest bidder to go build a $10 billion project. And frankly, that's a bit nuts to me.
Yeah, from my perspective, projects only seem to get to the dispute stage when money is involved. Mm-hmm. Clearly, your article didn't concentrate just on the financial issues as well. There were some logistical issues, whether or not we're using the right procurement methods, whether or not the industry is sufficiently supplied with labour, whether the industry is prepared to adopt innovation and techniques. Then there are more human behavioural things and cultural things as well. Perhaps if we look at the issues in terms of that logistics and human behaviour. Human capital, shortage of labour. Canada is a very inclusive society. Immigration has been a big thing, although they are tightening up a little bit more at the moment. And I'm not sure how much of that is due to Mr. Trump's influence as the incoming president in the US. Are these logistical issues easy fixes, or is that too much of an oversimplification? Is it just a matter of saying, okay, well, we'll hire people, we'll bring in more expertise from outside?
Well, logistically, these things can be done if the motivation is there and if you get the right people working on these things. There are relatively easy ways to do that. The issue, though, is far more about motivation and about why is it that people need to do this? And because there are other issues, right? Every time you bring in a new person or a new family, well, they need to be housed, and they need they need to be given health care, and need automobiles and licenses, and it's wrenching for many new immigrants, as I'm sure you know. It's difficult to move to Canada where it's cold, and lots of people have to adjust. At the same time, though, people we absolutely need the people, but we haven't really done a very good job of improving our productivity here ourselves. We've construction industry is probably the lowest ranked of our productivity improvements in the last 30 or 40 years. And we need to be thinking about that and trying to understand how to improve our productivity. Use the new tools that are available. Because we're still going to need lots of people, and yes, many of these will have to be immigrants. But at the same time, we have to encourage our own children to be, graduating from engineering school, going to technical college, learning about, becoming an electrician or a plumber or carpenter or whatever it is. I mean, we need all these people, and we've not focused our resources to be able to encourage people to go into these things. Everybody wants to be a game programmer or.
The construction industry has never been a sexy industry.
I don't know. I think it was sexy back when I was younger. When I was a kid, I mean, I thought I used to go watch these construction guys building houses and thought that was just the greatest thing.
Well, I will say that I probably enjoyed my early career a lot more, being on the sites, looking at the issues, understanding them and learning them. But there again, you could say I was a lot more naive at that point in time. Coming to Canada, though, and it's something which a number of other expats whom I have met with in the last 5 years have said, that Canada seems to be a little slow to adopt means and methods and ideas which have been used quite widely in other jurisdictions. In that respect, do you think that the industry, given your article indicated $500 billion over the next 30 years, I have seen an awful lot of international contractors being brought in to supplement and probably lead joint ventures in projects, in these big infrastructure projects. Is the Canadian industry mature enough? Are there things it can learn from elsewhere which it hasn't done so far? And are those issues which we're going to address today?
Well, certainly I think there's a lot of things we here in Canada need to get better at and need to learn from other people at. But I think one of the basic issues is we just need to help each other succeed. For some reason, there is a dog-eat-dog kind of attitude around construction projects here. That I can't let you see what I'm doing or see my ideas or anything like that because you might then take them and beat me out on the next contract. And frankly, that might have been a necessary approach back in the in the 80s and 90s as construction levels were way down low and there were way more construction contractors and constructors than there were projects. Today, that situation is completely reversed, John, and at this stage, we need to figure out how to use people as wisely as we possibly can to get all the work that has to get done. And the old attitudes of being very, I can't let you succeed because then I won't succeed. That's crazy talk. That's just not acceptable anymore. Now, I need to help you succeed. You need to help me succeed. And when we're both working in each other's best interests, all of our boats start to float. And that's when the productivity really starts taking off. And frankly, I think there's some competition is good. You want to, you don't want to share information. That's old thinking that frankly can't fly if we're going to actually build all the stuff we have to build.
Yeah, I agree. 40 years ago, when I started in the industry, most of the public sector works were pre-designed by the authority that was going to build them.
That's right.
They were let out as tenders for competitive tender. The design had taken several years to come to maturity, and it was complete by the time it reached the contractor's desk for bidding. We're not seeing that anymore. From the 80s onwards, there has been this fast-track construction whereby we look to get a partial design completed as soon as possible and spades in the ground as soon as possible. Yet it's at the same time which still the lowest bid wins. None of that seems to be conducive to a good construction, a good approach to construction.
No.
And then added to that, when you have contracts which over the years have tried to pass on more and more risk, is this fundamental to the industry? It's something I've seen in other jurisdictions. I'm beginning to see it in Canada as well. Is this a fundamental issue within the Canadian construction market?
It's certainly a problem, and I don't know that it's confined to Canada. I think the U.S. suffers from this as well. But you think about many of these projects these days are $5 billion, and it takes roughly 5 years to build them. Let's say, right? So that's roughly $1 billion a year of revenue. Now you look at the stock exchange. You look at the Canadian Stock Exchange, and a $1 billion a year company is a big company. It's probably one of the top 200 companies in the country, right? And if we were to say, all right, well, I'm going to start a $1 billion company, and I gotta build it up, make it successful, and then shut it down over the course of 5 years. I mean, there's a whole lot of issues associated with just any company with making widgets or whatever it is they're doing. That is a enormous task. And if we were to do something like that with a widget maker, well, the first thing you do, I need to go find the best CEO for the job. I need to go find the best CFO. I need to go find the office space and where are these people going to work, the factory space and so forth. And there's a whole administrative efforts and all kinds of different efforts that would be required. And you would need to set up a little bit of an incubator to help this company grow and to help set this company up for success. Instead, we say, no, we're not going to do any of that for these construction projects. We're going to hire the lowest bidder, and we're going to then throw all kinds of barriers in the way to see if we can't, gotcha, right?
Yeah.
And we wonder why these projects aren't successful. We need to be thinking of them as prizes that we are all there to support and help be successful. And when that happens, wow, it's amazing how productive we can all be and how these projects can, in fact, be very successul.
There's a number of things there which caught my attention as we're going through. I agree. If you're making widgets, it's one organization. Given the nature of the industry and the lack of expertise, which we've alluded to already, you're not just bringing one entity in to build this. You're bringing a number in. They are all in competition. They're all vying for a relatively small pool of work, although if 500 billion is not a small pool, but you can guarantee that there's still going to be some ambitious and optimistic views of it. Has optimism gone too far?
Absolutely. And we're all guilty. Human beings, by their very nature, tend to be optimistic, especially when you're a builder or when you're in the construction industry or an entrepreneur. You're always thinking big. You're thinking, we're going to go do this and it'll be great and so forth. And more often than not, these things don't work out the way we would like them to work out. It is. I personally like being around optimists. I like being with people that are excited about the future, and so for me, that is absolutely a bias that we constructors, anybody that wants to build anything, has. And so this is where we need to be. We need to recognize this as a reality, and that. The investors, the owners, the people that are building these facilities need to recognize that just because somebody is optimistic does not mean that you should take what they say for as gospel truth, because they are being optimistic. It is their nature. So it's important. This is where you need the independent oversight, somebody independent coming in and saying, well, the reality is that these projects cost 50% more than you think they might cost, right? I mean, you look at this book that everybody is referring to, these things, how big things get done. And that's exactly what they talk about, right? It's the reality is people kind of know what these things are costing. And if you do the math as to what the average cost is and add a little contingency to it, well, then your number is probably pretty accurate. But most people that are looking at the project, they're excited. Oh, well, we don't need to do that. There won't be COVID. There won't be this. There won't be that. We can do this much more effectively. And so they'll end up with a number that's a half or a third of what it probably will end up costing.
Yeah, and with this optimism, is there a danger of going too far the other way as well? when you combine optimism with this competitive approach to procurement, you are going to you're going to take on a lot more risk potentially. There is the risk that the scope of the work is underappreciated, not the difficulty of it is not recognized properly. Going the other way to a collaborative model, and I have seen it on a recent project whereby they're going through the design phase at the moment, and the owner is looking for a P80 risk analysis to develop the schedule for construction, and they are shocked by the
price.
The price that's now coming out of it. Any comment? Any thoughts
Oh,
on that?
but honestly, John, we shouldn't be talking about the price of these things before the thing is started. Cost is a consequence of doing all the right things on a project. And if you've set up the right team, you've got all the right governance structure, everybody is working collaboratively together and working in each other's best interests. You've got contracts that allow for change, and people are making decisions quickly and in an effort to get this thing built. That's when prices start coming down. But if you go out in the beginning and say, well, I I can't afford Gary. He's way too expensive. So, we'll get some guy that's half the price or a quarter of the price, and we'll get, these folks over here that really don't know the scope of the job we'll hold them to a price. Well, you're kind of asking for trouble. And whereas if in the other hand, you invest in people and you invest in the project, you invest in setting up all the little, it's like setting up dominoes. You invest the time to set up every domino just the way it's supposed to be set up. Yes. It's a beautiful thing when you knock them down because yes. Wow, it went exactly like we thought it would, But you have to do that. You have to do that painful front end work that nobody really wants to do. It's not fun. It's a pain in the neck.
How's this going to impact contractors, though? Because contractors want the revenue. Is the design phase going to be too long for them? Should we be looking at changing the procurement to have it engineered before the construction bids are brought in, before the contractors are brought in? There's a number of entities we can consider here. There's the governments, their approach to procurement. There's the owners, the contractors. They all have different drivers for their behavior. A lot of the problems that we've already touched on seem to be behaviorally based. But also your comments a moment ago suggest that if we change that behavior by changing the model of pricing and delivery, not pricing it until you start, that is going to change the attitude. I can see that it will if somebody's guaranteed to get paid for every cent that they spend, they will get a return on. But doesn't that take away from the public purse? Isn't it then saying, well, we'll just go to we'll pay you whatever it costs?
Yeah.
Is that the right way to go? I'm sure there's a lot of people who will argue, no, it's not.
Well, it's a difficult thing. And I think again, you talk about all the motivations of the different parties. The problem with politicians kicking off projects is their time in office may or may not coincide with the actual delivery of the project, and it's about getting votes and so on and so forth, and so that's the reality of how the world works. So we do have to kind of understand that there are these constraints that need to be worked with. You're not really going to change that. But at the same time, I think that if we get out of this idea that you lower the cost of every widget, and you get into the idea of setting up projects for success. I think about we have downtown here in Toronto the MARS. It's an acronym for something I can't remember exactly, but it's a incubator for new companies. And there's a fair amount of effort spent in bringing people with new ideas and investing in them and giving them tools and coaching and mentoring and supporting them. And it's those kinds of things then that help those companies grow and be very, very successful. And we need to be thinking a little more along those lines for some of these projects. If we can start investing in projects and start investing in our people that are building the projects and investing in tools and new approaches to projects, then all of a sudden the cost of projects starts to just plummet because you got really good people working with the latest tools and new ideas. But the problem is that first project probably won't realize the cost savings. But the second and the third and the fourth and the 10th will, and by huge steps. So there's an investment approach that's required. If you're looking to get that payoff in the investment on the first project, well then it'll never happen because everybody is trying to sub-optimize everything so that you don't really get that trained group of people. You don't get that new tool that has been refined and now is perfect for the job. You don't get that new construction method that has been kind of tried a few different ways so you kind of need to build the infrastructure for these projects to go really well. But that first building, you won't see a lot of payoff. In fact, you'll see perhaps even a little extra cost in that first project or two.
The rush to build, though, if we're looking at infrastructure projects, and here in Ontario at the moment, there's probably half a dozen on the go. And Metrolinx, the agency, is announcing an expansion of the GO project. Via Rail is looking at the high-speed rail across Ontario. Those are very few and far between. It's not like a highways project, and I bring in highways because I'm aware of the National Highways Alliance in the UK, for example, where they have long-term relationships with very limited numbers of contractors and designers, which was competitively won, and it's monitored for economy all the way through. The way the work is being procured at the moment here in Ontario, certainly and possibly across Canada, doesn't seem to be following that. It doesn't seem to be allowing for this long-term relationships. Is that a cultural thing? Is it seen as anti-competitive to be working in that way? Or is it a way that we've got to go to realize these cost savings?
Well, it's a really good question, and I think what we're seeing today is residue from the procurement practices that were initially configured back in the early 70s and 80s, when there was not very many projects, not very many things to do, and lots of construction people. As I mentioned before, that's all changed now. So we kind of need to rethink how we how we go and procure these things. I think there's so much work that, I'll give you an example. I was listening to a podcast that the GTAA, they have the hub, I think is their and they were talking about using the GTA, Greater Toronto Airport Authority. So they're talking about spending, many tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 30 years themselves. But they have really done a lot of work at the airport to look at AI in the movement of people, movement of luggage, movement of planes through the airport. And they've got some really cool things that they're working on to streamline people through the airport, baggage, and so on. Mm-hmm. And those ideas, those practices could be extremely valuable on a transit project or on a nuclear power project, right? There's some really cool stuff that they're using in the airport that could be applied in other places. Mm-hmm. The problem is that everybody gets into their little silos, and if you've never worked on an airport, you can't know how to do a project on an airport. Oh, if you've never worked on a nuclear power project, you can't ever figure out how to you're not qualified to work on this nuclear power project, and transit, and I mean they're all guilty of it. And the fact remains that we can all learn from each other. There's a huge amount of opportunity if we start investing in one another and start, listening and trying to understand how to make our own house better and how to help you be better as well, right? And we just need to rethink how we're building these projects, and it's a major rethink of what's important. And I pose to you, John, that what's important are the projects. What's important is the expansion of the Pearson Airport and getting that operation running really smoothly. What's important is the building of the brand new nuclear power plants or the building of the new transit systems, because these are cool projects. We need them. And we should be focusing on that, right? The outcome, the final project, and how to set it up for success. And all these other little things in the middle, the cost of somebody's hours, or the fact that I have to pay for this guy's training, or all these are just silly little things that, frankly, we need to figure out how to get through that. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
the project is cool, man. Let's go build the project.
It's an approach which I term dollar-centric behavior.
Yes.
And the dollar should not dictate what you do and when. Okay, so we mentioned the entities which play a part in construction. You and I are seasoned. Some would say old. I'll say seasoned.
Nah.
We now have an opportunity to bring this to the public, and hopefully this podcast will be a starting point, and we can build from here. Where do we look first? Do we look to the governments? Do we look to the transit authorities, the airport authorities, the nuclear authority? Do we look to the contractors? Where? Or the professional bodies? Because I don't see that the professional bodies have the same level of involvement in the industry that I've experienced in Australia, in the UK, and in the US as well, for example.
So I think the short answer to your question is we need them all. Everybody needs to start stepping up, including individuals. That's the other. In fact, I would say individuals first. And we all need to be thinking about what is it that I can do to help make this project, my occupation, my company perform better. And when we're working in each other's best interests, you know what? I think we can do this. There's this process we have for whatever it is, issuing drawings, or for welding pipe, or whatever it is. I have an idea. We need to go. Let's try this new tool I found. right? And pushing the envelope a little. We all need to be pushing the envelope a little bit, trying a little bit to let's streamline this process, right? So it starts there. But then I think all of those entities that you talked about, government, the professional institutions, contractors, owner organizations, all of them need to be stepping up and start investing in their people, investing in these projects, investing in the future, thinking about what is it we can do that'll make this a little more effectively. And how are other people doing this? And let's figure out, let's be willing to change, right? And in many cases, that could be quite, what's the word? Change is hard, and it could be wrenching for some of these organizations. There are many procurement organizations that have built these empires, and this is how we do things here, and well, we need to rethink how we do procurement. And frankly, the way we had done them before is just not acceptable. We got to do it differently. It's not to say that anybody loses jobs. It's not to say that anybody loses any authority or power. But it does mean that I got to change the way I've been doing things. It does mean that I need to start talking to the engineers and talking to the suppliers and talking to the constructors and talking to all these people about how best to get this ball over the goal line. And to me, that's the scary part. It's I've got to change. I can't keep doing it the way I've always done it, and everybody has to change. I mean, you look at you were talking about the professional organizations. PEO, we do a fair amount of work with PEO here in Ontario, the Professional Engineers of Ontario. And, they have a lot of young engineers. As soon as they become a professional engineer, they join the PEO. And there's a lot of education, a lot of educating, a lot of mentorship that can be done in those organizations, and encouragement of people in moving into different roles, and talking to different disciplines and talking to people. There's just an enormous amount of communication. The universities are another big university and technical colleges. They need to be talking to the companies, right? What is it you need? How can we make the people that we graduate more effective immediately on your work?
Yeah. That brings me to an article I saw over the last weekend from a correspondent in the Caribbean who was referring to the growth of charlatanism, for want of a better description, where people are selling themselves of having a far greater level of skill than they actually have. This comes back to education. I don't see that the industry in Canada, or indeed anywhere in the world, is particularly good at investing in education. You come out of university, you go into the job, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
There are no real structured mentorship or training or coaching programs. And if we're going to collaborate and we're going to change, then it's my belief that we need that.
Yes.
And that unless we do educate people better, we're going to fail at the collaboration. We're going to continue in the same behavioral patterns with the same outcomes that we've experienced so far.
Yep.
Who funds that? Who funds that education?
Well, and this is back to the investment approach, right? Frankly, everybody needs to fund these things. Everybody needs to step up. And I mean, one of the things I think is critically important is that, once you've had a year under your belt, you need to take the new guy and go show him how to do the things that you did. I mean, we all need to be coaching the next generation. We all need to be coaching each other. One of the things a while back I did there was a study we did. We were looking at what people perceived as risky behavior, and the intention was not to get people, walking out in the middle of the highway or doing anything stupid, but in fact to take on a little more, venture out a little bit beyond their comfort zone and do things that are a little bit more risky. And I remember I was doing this survey. I was interviewing this one woman who was quite, she thought, it was quite risky that her boss had gone to somebody in another department and suggested a new tool. Ooh, that is so, out there. Really, they know what they're doing. Why would you go and suggest a new tool for somebody? But the fact is that, hallelujah, it suggests the new tool. Step out of that comfort zone.
Yes.
Go out there and ask dumb questions and find out what's going on. Why isn't we do that way? That seems kind of dumb. We should be asking those questions. And when everybody is doing that and taking somebody under their wing and coaching them and investing in them, but I think your question really was on who should invest in people going to classes and that's important too. And I think that for that, everybody needs to invest. The contractors need to invest more. There needs to be kind of a minimum requirement that they are required to do. But owners need to recognize that the margins need to be there so they can invest. And the owners need to invest in various sessions and so forth so that people can learn how to work together. And maybe there's a new tool they're bringing into the project, and everybody needs to figure out how to use that new tool, and there needs to be investment there. So it's a general understanding that being penny pinchers in getting people up the curve on these things is a bad use of energy. We all need to be being much more free with our money to help our fellow workers, do things more effectively.
Mm-hmm. Are we only going to be able to do that, though, if we bring more people into the industry, if we make the industry more attractive? Because there is a huge gap, not just in general skills, but in knowledge levels and knowledge transfer. It's okay saying that somebody with 5 years experience has a level of knowledge which is good enough for the industry. But is that really comparable with people with 30 years experience, 20 years experience? Are we using that knowledge to the best for the industry?
Well, this is, I'll tell when I first graduated from university in the 80s, I was the youngest guy the first day I got there, and then for the next 15 years I was the youngest guy. And everywhere I went, and I was on 6 or 8 different projects in that time frame, and everywhere I went I was the youngest guy. Basically, it's nobody hired engineers after that period. And so what happened was I was schooled by this, a bunch of more senior people that kind of showed me the ropes, and they would give me all the dirty work to go do. Here you go, take care of this, Gary. You got a problem there, give it to Gary, he'll take care of it. And so I got pretty good at that. But I had some really good mentors and some really good people that were coaching me every step of the way. And I mean so that's what we've got to do with these younger folks now. We've got to bring them up the curve. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I think we're missing, the unions did a very good job back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and still today, in their apprenticeship program. And apprenticeships, I think, are hugely valuable. That's where you learn how to do the work. And we need to do that same thing in every role on every project.
Yes.
So that everybody has an apprentice or two that they're coaching and mentoring, and that are helping them get the work done. Because that's how we bring the next generation up the curve. And that, frankly, is kind of fun, right? First of all, it's good for your own ego because I got these apprentices, I'm showing them the ropes, you know? But also, it's good now the apprentices have somebody to talk to. Well, how do you do that? And that looks kind of dumb. Is that really the right way to do this? And you know, you start this this conversation about how best to do the work. Instead, what's happened in many cases, again, in the name of the holy dollar, is no, we don't want any apprentices on our job. We only want experienced people. And that has been our downfall, frankly, because now there are no young people that really understand all the details of how things are done. Yes. And as a result, we have kind of screwed ourselves for projects going forward.
You've answered my next question as well. I have observed that the flat management structure only works if you have people there who have a high degree of competency and a high degree of experience.
That's right.
And you cannot develop in that sort of environment. So we need to go back to more of a hierarchical structure.
Yep.
Which brings me on to the next thing. When governments, when owners are procuring contractors and parties to deliver these projects, do they need to pay more attention to the relational capacity? The capacity of the organization in terms of its depth of structure, its depth of experience, not just having a specialist in an offshore wind farm or a nuclear specialist because it's a nuclear project, but in general construction. Do they need to establish that there is the diverse knowledge there as well to deal with issues as they arise on the project?
Well, certainly I think that's a qualification that you should expect of the people that you bring on to the project. If you're the owner, then there should be some requirements. Well, you need to have deputies in many of these key roles. You need to have apprentices on the construction site. You need to invest in the training of these people. You need to invest in the adoption of new tools. These should be requirements of the organizations that you want to bring onto your project. And there should be an expectation as well that I want you to go look at some of these new tools and look at adopting these new tools. And yes, I understand there will be a cost to that, but that's okay because frankly, it's going to make you better, not only for this project, but for the next project and the next project and the next project. And that is where the payoff is. And another good example is we should be investing in local businesses, right? It's the local businesses that will then be your biggest fans and be the biggest supporters of your projects. The mining guys actually learned this a while back, right? They'll go off to a remote community somewhere in the north or in wherever, South America or Africa, and they'll up in the mountains in South America, and they find these little villages, and they recognize that, well, A, we're going to need a lot of these people to go work for us in the mine, but also we can use we can get the local vendors to give us safety vests and help drive stuff back and forth and so there was a big investment. The mining folks have learned this the hard way, by the way, because otherwise these people all picket the fence and don't let them go build their mine, right? But no, they invest in the local communities and it is the local communities that become the biggest supporters of these mines, and that's what you want. And unfortunately, for some reason, in downtown Toronto or in downtown Edmonton or in downtown Vancouver, we don't think of the locals. We don't think of the local shops that will be impacted by our construction project that's going to go on for 5 or 10 or 15 years. And so as a result, you end up with a whole bunch of local people that are just really ticked off by this project, right?
Yes.
And they will fight this project every step of the way,
Yes.
right? Whereas on the other hand, you're giving, buying sandwiches from the local sandwich shop and so forth. When you're doing that, they're going to be your biggest supporters, and they will be there helping you be successful, however they can possibly help you.
Interestingly, I saw something along a very similar line this morning that Lord Banner, who's a barrister in England, made a presentation with the Prime Minister about removing blockages in all areas of construction. I think that's where we're heading with this discussion as well. I'm conscious of the time. I don't want us to lose our audience as we go on.
There's lots to talk about, John.
I think we have opened a huge can of worms. How do we start digging those worms out? What would you suggest is the first step that we should take now? Maybe 5 minutes just to wrap up. What changes can you and I make today?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm quite involved here in Ontario. We're trying to set up a group of owner organizations to sit and work together and share information and start thinking about how to learn from one another and grow our people, grow our contractors, the tools, the systems. And so I'm actively working with a number of organizations on that. And I hope to bring that to fruition within the next year, ideally. So, I'm quite hopeful about that. We're spending a lot of time and energy to try to bring people up the curve. But so that's personally what I'm doing. I have a stake in the success of construction projects here in Ontario and in Canada and in North America, frankly. I would love for Ontario to be the center of excellence. So in 10 years, people go, wow, those guys in Ontario know how to build projects, right? Those guys really, you want to learn how to, regional development, you want to learn how to go do that? Go spend a little time on a project in Ontario. They'll show you how to do that. That's where I want us to get to, right? But it requires investment today of time and money and energy. And it requires us all taking a little bit of a risk in, I'm liable to get shot down by suggesting this, but damn it, I'm going to suggest it anyway.
A lot of what we've discussed today seems to come back to this, that the industry is comfortable where it is.
Mm-hmm.
The industry is one that has a habit of reinventing the wheel. Every time it reaches a problem, it seems to go through the same process rather than trying to be innovative.
That's right.
I think you're right. I think the only way we can do this is to collectively sit down, look at the industry, say every area needs to change. We do not get a blank piece of paper. I'm not that ideological to think that we can scrap everything that has gone before. We have to work with what we have, but leading the industry through it by focus groups with professional organizations, educational establishments, contractors. I think I do agree with you. That's the way to develop the industry going forward.
And I think it's important too, John, we should be challenging each other.
Agreed.
John, what are you doing to make the industry better?
I am trying to bring to attention the exact same issues that you brought out in your article. I have found over the course of my career, I have had to reinvent myself as well. Not only because I wanted a slightly different challenge, but because the challenges within the industry were there to be met. The latest one for me is this behavior of the industry. Mm-hmm. I have gone through the engineering stage, I've gone through the legal stage, the dispute resolution stage. I would like to pass on my knowledge, if anybody will listen to it, of course. But I would like to be able to bring that back into the industry as well and say, look, let's be innovative here. Let's think outside of the box. Getting out of the comfort zone, making the change, being innovative is a key to that.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a key to the success of collaboration as
I
well.
agree with you 100%.
And
John, it's been a pleasure.
It has indeed. Thank
Yeah.
you for the article. Thank you for joining me today. I'm certainly open to people approaching me on LinkedIn for any further discussion on this,
And me too.
and I'm sure you are the same.
Absolutely.
Gary Williams, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
John Dowse, thank you very much.